John, reckon you could beat Carwell's Matt Watson in a drag race?
Probably not with any of your stock, James, but I'll give it a go.
Well, John, it's funny you should say that. Right now, Carwow is offering dealers the chance to win one of 20 spaces for a day on the track with Matt. All you need to do is source stock in Carwow's daily online auctions in September.
So you're saying just by buying a couple of Picantos, you could win a day on the track with Matt Watson?
That's right, John. Every vehicle bought and collected via Carwow's auctions in September counts as one entry. So the more you buy, the more chances you get to race against Matt Watson himself. You can sign up today, John, at carwow.co.uk/partners/win. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to the Car Dealer Podcast, where we pick our favourite stories of the week and ask an industry guest to choose which were the best. I'm John Ray, and joining me this week from 2 floors underneath me in what can only be described as a hotel in Leicester is James Baggett. James, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks, John. Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. I am in quite possibly the strangest hotel room I've ever stayed in. It's, I think it can only be described as a honeymoon suite. It's got far too many mirrors for my liking. Honestly, I had a little bit of a problem with my first room, which is like the aircon was leaking. So they moved me and they upgraded me. And it was quite a nice room for. They said, "Oh, don't worry, we've got you an even nicer room." And I came in here and it had very, very soft lighting. There's lots of leather everywhere, and everything is like a reflective surface. I mean, like even the bathroom door is mirrored.
Yeah.
It's very strange, very strange. But yeah, we're up here, aren't we? Because we've been on the road this week. We've been out seeing some dealers, which has been fun. I'll save one of the visits for our stories, but we spent quite a bit of time yesterday at Top 555, which is a supercar dealer for part of our Selling Supercars series, the video series on YouTube, which was a great day yesterday, wasn't it? They were lovely chaps, really nice business, been running it for 25 years. Fantastic story the owner's got. I just thought the way he's kind of built that business, he said left school without any GCSEs and just really kind of fought for it tooth and nail all the way. And 25 years later, there he is sat there with very, very expensive cars sat around him. He had an AMG 1, which is the £2.8 million Mercedes in the showroom. So, yeah, he's done all right for himself, hasn't he? So, yeah, I'm looking forward to putting that one together. But I've got a new favourite thing, John.
Okay. What's that?
Sausage making.
Oh, God.
So
we're actually going to talk about this.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. So part of the other reason John and I are on the road is because my better half had bought us a joint birthday present. Actually, not John, which was a sausage making course in Leicester. So last night we spent the evening making sausages, and never have I enjoyed so much innuendo in all my life.
Did you get a video?
No video, but there are some pictures. We should probably put on Instagram.
James, we've done some in the 13 years that I've been working here. We've done some very strange things. I mean, what have we done? We've been to Tokyo and filmed Boris Johnson driving a Mitsubishi Outlander.
Yeah.
We've tried to race a Mazda CX-5 with a canoe.
Yes, we
but
have.
I think probably standing in a pie making factory in Melton Mowbray, watching you try and stuff a kilo of pork mince into an intestine, at that moment I thought, no, this is the weirdest thing we've done.
I mean, when it comes to work college, John, I mean, it's I'm glad you were there with me. Let's put it that way.
We'll move very swiftly on from this whole arrangement. I mean, I should say as well, we've each got a kilo of sausages in our hotel mini fridges, which I don't think is anything as what they've been used for before, or probably will ever be again.
Part of the hotel choice was, has he got a mini fridge that we can put a kilo of sausages in?
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to introduce our guest now. Hopefully some more civilized and normal conversation. So Our guest this week, I'm thrilled to say, is James Wilson, COO of Motorway. James, lovely to see you.
Hello, it's great to be back. I'm not sure how to follow up on sausage making and the honeymoon suite. It's a combination that makes the mind boggle a little bit. I feel slightly uncomfortable.
Oh, I am sorry. Oh dear. Very nice to see you, James. I'm very much looking forward to the podcast live next week. You are our esteemed sponsors. It's taking place on Wednesday next week. We've got lots of people coming along. We've got a really good panel on the podcast. Some really interesting people. What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, first of all, really looking forward to the day. I mean, we did Swansea last year, and what I loved about it is, yes, the podcast, of course, is amazing, and you have some fantastic guests, but the networking, actually catching up with people across the industry, talking to dealers, getting their feedback, and just connecting. And part of the reason we're sponsoring this and we sponsor other events like this is because we do believe getting people together is incredibly powerful. And we see that time and again. So yeah, really looking forward to it and listening to your speakers who look great.
Yeah, we've got some great people. People can get tickets, John, online still, can't they? There is a tab at the top of the page now, isn't there, on the Car Dealer Magazine website? You click Podcast Live, and you can book a ticket. So hopefully we'll see some people there next week. But James, let's talk about Motorway. I've got lots of questions.
Okay.
Some of them have been put to me by some of your customers too. So we'll get on to those. But I mean, what's new with Motorway? I mean, you've had some amazing growth over the last couple of years. I've noticed in the last couple of weeks, you've been well over 2,000 cars a day, haven't you, in the auctions? What else is new?
Yeah, I mean, well, as you say, this is a very busy time for us, as it is for dealers through September and October in particular, and really pleased with the number of cars we're able to offer to our dealers. So, as you said, I think it was last week we had our biggest ever daily sale with 2,277 cars for sale, and that's continued, and we expect that to continue, and that means we're offering great range to our dealers, which is a really important part of our proposition to them. I mean, the other area we've been focusing on is making it easier and quicker for dealers to get the cars once they've won them in the daily auction. And as of last week, our pay solution, which I've talked about on this podcast in the past, we've now completed £7.5 billion worth of transactions through pay, which is a ginormous volume and shows how that's been taken up by our dealers because it's so much easier to make the payments. It's quicker, it's easier. We manage all of the admin on behalf of those dealers. Earlier this year, I think it was January, we launched stock funding. So those dealers who have a relationship with Next Gear Capital can use their stock funding to fund the purchase. So they can just, at a click of a button, pull down that cash and pay for the vehicle, and that will be automatically updated on their Next Gear account. And what I'm excited to say actually is that we will be launching with LE Capital in October. So that'll be our second stock funding partner. And what we've seen with Next Gear is we've got hundreds of dealers using that. It's been very, very popular. And we know that there are hundreds of dealers with LE Capital who also use Motorway. So overall, we're continuing to provide that range of stock for dealers and simplify the purchases they make through Motorway, because we know that's really important. They want great stock, they want it fast onto their forecourts so they can retail it.
Yeah, there's a lot of dealers out there, isn't there, that use stock funding, and if they weren't able to use it on your platform, they couldn't buy from you. So, I mean, that's a massive step. Are you looking to push that into any of the other stock funding partners?
Well, at this stage, I want to get LE Capital up and running in October. But of course, we continue to take on board dealer feedback, and we know that other stock providers out there. So certainly something we'll consider. For sure.
What's the market out there like at the moment? I mean, some of the feedback I'm getting from dealers that it is incredibly competitive, that they're struggling to get hold of stock. Their margins are being really squeezed. What's Motorway seeing?
I think overall it's a solid market, is what I would say. It's stable, and I think you've been reporting on that over the last few weeks in terms of pricing. There's definitely lots of demand, so we've seen record numbers of dealers bidding on our platform, record numbers of bids. So there's definitely significant demand for stock at the moment. But yeah, overall a solid market. And as I say, we're seeing growth and we're seeing good dealer engagement.
How big do you think these auctions are going to get? I mean, I know it's only a few months ago. It feels like that you were talking about, topping 1,500 and topping 1,000. You're now well over 2,000. How big do you think these motorway auctions are going to get on a daily basis?
Well, I think a lot bigger, I hope, for our business. But I think when you step back and you think about the volumes we're doing, yes, they're very, very substantial. But as a portion of the total market, they're still relatively small. So there's lots and lots of headroom for us to grow. But what's important is we keep delivering for our dealers. So we haven't got a right to grow. We've got to deliver for our dealers consistently, day in, day out, a great experience. So that means lots more relevant stock for them and making it as easy and as quick as possible for them to purchase through our platform. And we've got to make sure we're cutting through with private consumers who want to sell their cars and make sure we're making it clear to them why it's a great place for them to sell their car and make more money than if they went through alternative channels. So I think the short answer is there's lots of headroom, and that's what we're aiming to capitalise on.
Tell those people listening. I mean, I've seen a little bit myself. When we produced a video all about Motorway, I saw what goes on behind the scenes of Motorway. But tell those people listening and watching on YouTube, what goes into the process of getting one of these cars listed? Because it's not as simple as just somebody sat at home, putting the details in on their phone and pressing go live, is it?
No, I mean it's that there are many steps that you have to go through end to end, and our strategy is to make sure that each of those steps is as easy as possible, whether that's for a dealer or for a seller. So from a seller's perspective, the process they go through is they use our app to get an initial valuation. They'll then profile the vehicle using our app, taking photos, adding information about the condition of the vehicle. That will then be submitted. We will then review that vehicle and the condition of the vehicle, and if there is additional damage, we will reprice that vehicle, and then it will go into our daily auction. The daily auction now runs from 4:30 to 3:30 the next day. So we've extended very recently, actually, the length of the auction in response to direct feedback from dealers who said, look, I'm still in the office from 4:30. I want to be able to bid. Okay, we'll extend the auction to support you, make it easier for you. So the auction runs, dealers bid, a dealer wins the vehicle, at which point we need to collect the documentation from the seller, V5C, driving license, and bank account details, and we verify this seller. And we have a bunch of systems that run in the background, some automated, some manual checks, to ensure that that's all done. At which point the dealer then starts to arrange collection for with the seller, or they can use Motorway Move, our transport service, to do that. Then at the point of collection, the dealer or the Motorway Move driver will inspect the vehicle and confirm the price, at which point dealers using Motorway Pay can pay for the vehicle and the transaction is complete. That's kind of the end-to-end process, and there are multiple steps that happen, as you can hear, as you've heard, to do that, and we're constantly focused on how do we make them better and better.
Tell people listening also about the dropout rate of those consumers, because I want to get onto some of the feedback I've had from dealers, and I'll ask you those questions. But one of the things is I think it's important for people to understand is how difficult it is for platforms like you to actually get people to list their cars.
Yes, so I mean, we have what we call a funnel. So we have lots of sellers will start the process of getting an initial valuation. Some of them are just looking to understand pricing and what they could make from their vehicle. Others have higher intent and they want to move through the entire process. And that's frankly true across the entire funnel. And I suspect this may come up from the feedback you've got from dealers, but one of the challenges is making sure that sellers are committed to the process. And so when we are going through the process of revaluing their vehicle to account for that additional damage that I mentioned, we will communicate very clearly that our expectation is that they will continue with the sale if the vehicle hits the reserve price or above. Now, that being said, there are a number of sellers that will drop out at that point, even if they've got that price, because they change their minds, their circumstances change, there may be competitive offers. So that does happen, and I know that's frustrating for dealers. We have a team that's dedicated to make sure that we're following up with sellers to make sure they're confirming as quickly as possible. Because I think what dealers want to have is certainty. They want to know, I've got the car, I haven't got the car, because that enables them to then go back and say, okay, I haven't got that car, I can bid on a different car, get that into my forecourt and get it sold. So we work really, really hard to ensure that we are getting commitments, and we have messaging through our app and through the customer support teams that work directly with sellers to get that point across, and then teams to ensure that we are following up with sellers to get them to commit to the sale, so that dealers have that certainty.
Yeah, I mean, one of the points that was raised to me, and I mean, I've experienced it this week on a car that I bid on. I bid on a Hyundai i10. One was the winning bid, was over reserve. Then get a message from Motorway saying, "Well, the customer wants £121 more." Well, at that point, once you worked in fees and the slim margin I was working on anyway, it makes the deal not worth going ahead with. So I had to say to the Motorway team, you have to cancel that one, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
That is frustrating. You've won a deal that you think is over reserve. That customer's listed their car at a price that is already well above cap, and then even still they're coming back and pushing for more. What can Motorway do to put a stop to that sort of behaviour?
Well, I don't have the perfect answer for you now. All I can say and reassure dealers is that we are aware of the issue, and we're working on a number of different ways of solving it. Part of it is around that communication and education of the seller, that they're going to they're getting a great deal. Your frustration is, I've given them a great deal and they've still dropped out. I think we can do more to educate sellers on the quality of the bid that they've got. But there are also some other areas we're looking at to improve the commitment we get from sellers, because I know this is an issue, and it's, by the way, it's frustrating for us as well. We want sellers to go through the transaction.
Yeah.
We're very motivated. Dealers sometimes wonder, but we are very motivated to get that sale to go through. And so it is one of the areas we're focusing on to make sure we can support our dealers, and frankly also support our business. It's important for us. We're as motivated as dealers to solve this problem, but it's not a straightforward fix, because part of the proposition to sellers is that it's a free service. They are not completely committed, right? And that gives them the chance to go through this process and get to what we want them to do is get to the auction, get a great price, be convinced by that, and then they continue through the process. So it is a tricky balancing act that we're trying to manage, but we're very aware of the challenge, and we are working on it. And dealers will see more stuff on that coming out.
How many people who do evaluation on your site actually go ahead with listing it? What is it? 5 in 10, 7 in 10? What's the percentage of people who actually go through with the process?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but we do see there's a significant number who are just going through the valuation process. They're at the top of the funnel. What we find is that there is quite a long process that a seller will go through. So they'll start there, and they'll come to us to check the price, and then they'll come back and then work their way through the funnel, work their way through the process that I described, getting to the sale, because people are doing their research, trying to work out where's the best place for me to sell my car. Now, our goal is to make that as short as possible and convince them up front that Motorway is the best place for them to sell their car, because they're going to get a great price. And that's another focus area for us. But typically, as I say, we see initial valuation, and they come back and go all the way through.
Isn't this process, though, pushing up prices just continuously? Because let's face it, Motorway, it's a very competitive market out there, isn't there, for people when they come to sell a car? You've got there's obviously CarWow, there's We Buy Any Car, there's the option of taking it to a dealer. When these customers are trying to sell their cars, there's lots of options. But so the only way you can really get it listed on your site is surely giving them the best possible price. But then for the dealers, that means that the prices keep getting pushed up. What would you say to people who think that way?
I don't really see it that way, because what we're doing is we're connecting. If you go back to what we do at Motorway, what we're doing is connecting supply and demand more efficiently. And there are dealers out there who want to buy that car for a given price. And in the past, they weren't able to get access to that stock and make that transaction happen. With Motorway, we're enabling them to see that stock, which they wouldn't have seen, because traditionally they were just using part exchange, and they're buying that vehicle. And so there are dealers out there who want to buy those cars at that price and think they can make money and do make money margin for their customer base. So that's what we're really doing. We're actually democratizing access to that stock. In the past, the really big dealers would have access to that more so than the smaller dealers because they've got more footfall. And now we're actually balancing this off and actually democratizing it so that every dealer, irrespective of size, irrespective of business model, can get access to that stock and bid on it at a level that means that they can make a margin for their dealership, given that they know what their customers are prepared to pay.
It's a great way of looking at it because you hear a lot. If you're out there, and I'm sure you get it all the time when you're out there chatting to dealers, they say, "Oh, I can't buy from Motorway because the margins are too slim, etc., etc." And the margins are slim on Motorway, but you've just perfectly explained it there. I mean, we wouldn't have access to those cars in other parts of the country if there wasn't a platform like yours. What do you say to those dealers though who just say, "Look, I can't make money"? I'm take an example this week. I looked at a car, and after tax, VAT, and fees, there was probably £600-700 in it. If you work back from retail price and Auto Trader, that is a very, very slim margin to be putting a warranty on one of those used cars. What would you say to dealers out there who just look at it and say, "I can't make it work"?
I think our goal is to make sure there's enough stock available that there is stock where they can make it work, and that's why what's really important to us is not just growing. It's growing that volume of stock and the range of stock, so that dealers of all shapes and sizes can find stock that is suitable for their specific dealership, so they can make money. And as we grow, those opportunities should increase for those dealers. So it may be today you can't make money on that car, but there may be another car tomorrow in our auction where you can. And I would encourage dealers to continue to use our platform to find those opportunities. And let's be clear, if it wasn't working, we wouldn't have the scale we're at now. The dealers are buying, they are finding ways, finding stock that's profitable for them and supporting the growth of their dealerships. That's why we've been successful. But we remain very, very focused on ensuring that we are listening to dealers' feedback, as we just talked about, and constantly trying to improve the efficiency of the marketplace so they get access to that stock. And once they've got it, what's really important as well is that they can get hold of that stock once they've won it fast and get it onto the forecourt quickly, because days to sell is as important as margin per car, as we all know. So there are two things we really are focused on. It's getting that profitable stock to dealers and getting it to them quickly and easily.
Yeah, I mean, I use the platform regularly. I bought 3 cars from Motorway this week. I like the fact it's there in my hand wherever I am every single day. I also like the fact that you've extended those times. It does mean that you can look at it as, what is it, an hour after the auction's ended, it starts again. I mean, it's a great way of doing it. And someone said to me when I think it was at one of your events, it was a case of you need to get your bids in first, because if your bid is the same level as somebody else, it's the first bid wins it, isn't it? I never realised that until someone told me. So that was a handy tip. What are you going to do about the way that the customers describe their cars? Often, I mean, it's a frustration I feel a lot of the time. You go out there and you see the car, and it's not as described, and it's all very well when you go out and pick it up yourself because you can have that discussion. But when you're using something like Motorway Move, it's harder to have that discussion remotely, when it comes to chipping the customer. What steps are you making to make sure that those cars are more accurately described? For example, have you thought about a video walk around of a car, something that we can really interrogate and watch ourselves and make our own assessment?
Yeah, so two ways we're thinking about this. First of all, how we get sellers to provide the information, and video is an obvious opportunity for us. And we have started to explore that, but also making sure that we're really clear to sellers the importance of providing a comprehensive assessment of the vehicle, because at the end of the day, if they don't, there's going to be an inspection, whether it's through Motorway Move or through the dealer themselves at the point of collection, and it will create a challenge for them and potentially a repricing of that vehicle. So there's more I think we can do just in pure education terms in the app. We've started in the Motorway app for sellers. We've started to do that. And then obviously there's certain types of technology we can use to try and spot damage as well. So there's a whole range of different options that we're exploring. but that's really, really important to us on that side, on the seller side of our business. Then when it comes to collection, the reason why we launched Motorway Collect, our appraisal app, was to make it easier for dealers to understand where additional damage has been added, if it has been added. So instead of getting the kind of reports you can get from other service providers, where you just get a report that's completely independent from that original listing you've seen on Motorway, with Motorway Collect, you can see the original profile and you can see any additional damage that's been added. And and the feedback from dealers is that helps in making an assessment. Now, there's still more we can do there, and that's also an area of opportunity for us to add in additional bits of information that dealers would like to see, and indeed things like video at that point as well. So we know that we're not done, and I think that's the message I would communicate to dealers. We get it. We're not perfect. We've made a lot of progress, and we continue to invest to make this as easy as possible. But we also hear the feedback, and we are working on it in the background, and they will see those improvements coming in the future.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that Collect app. When you send a driver out and they can show you any additional problems that they've found in the vehicle, and you can compare it like for like with the original listing. That's really, really useful. Have you thought about offering that to dealers? So, like dealers like myself who go out and collect the cars, it would be brilliant for me to be able to use that.
It's really interesting you say that. We have considered it, and at this point, it's I can't say more than that. I mean, there's a whole range of options. And I think actually that's the interesting thing. The interesting kind of actually it's a challenge. We have lots of opportunities where we can improve, and one of the things we have to be thoughtful about is where is the best investment of our team's effort and time to solve these problems. So that is something that we've considered, and we need to work out is that the right place to invest our time and effort, or is it upstream with the sellers? But these ideas are good ideas. They are things we've considered. They're in the mix. That's as much as I can say.
That's good. Okay, I'll take that. I'll take that as a positive. What are you seeing when it comes to electric vehicles on the platform? I just think, like anecdotally, when I look at like the buy it nows after the auctions finish, I often see a lot of electric cars falling into those, and I just sort of assume that's because dealers aren't buying them as much as they would be other vehicles. What's the truth? What are you actually seeing?
No, it's interesting you say that. So electric vehicles are still a very small share of the vehicles that we have on the platform. It's growing, but it's sub 5%. So it's small, and you'll see that. I think today we've got 1,300 cars or something for sale, 30-ish EVs. But actually, the conversion is pretty good. I would say it's at least at parity, certainly more recently with ICE and hybrids. So actually, although it's a small volume, they're converting pretty well. But I still think it's early. It's still very, very early for used EVs. And again, there's opportunity for us to support that. And that's another good example of another opportunity for us. How can we support the profiling of those vehicles? Things like battery health. Is there a way we can support dealers on that? Which we haven't invested in yet, but that's something we're considering. But again, it's a trade-off. Is that the right place to focus on versus the kind of ICE and ICE business when it's so much bigger?
James, I just want to go back to the valuations because I'd just like to have an understanding of how Motorway values these vehicles, because there seems to me that there's an Auto Trader retail price, there's a cap value, but then there's also a Motorway price, which is very different to the ones that we see when we're valuing vehicles. How do you, as a business, get to that valuation? Is it pushed by the customer, or is it pushed by yourself, or is it a negotiation? Give those people listening an understanding of how it works.
So the process is we have a proprietary pricing algorithm that we've built based on the hundreds of thousands of cars that we've sold through our platform. So we've sold over 500,000 cars now through Motorway. That gives us a really good database of the pricing through Motorway, which nobody else has access to. Nobody else has that data. Auto Trader doesn't have it. No one else in the industry has it. And we use that, and we do also take feeds of third-party pricing. So we look at cap as well as an input, and we will set a initial valuation based on that pricing algorithm, and then we will That's assuming the car is in good condition. We then look at the state of the vehicle, the condition of the vehicle as submitted by the seller, and we will make adjustments for that. And again, we're using data that we've built up over time from our from the vehicles that we've sold, and that's it. There isn't a negotiation that's happening. It is a motorway-led price, and then of course dealers can choose to bid at the level they want to relative to that price. An important point that we make to sellers is that this is a guide price, and our expectation is if the dealer bids above that price, you will accept it because dealers have made a commitment of their cash to that sale, and we expect you to accept that price. But we also are trying to also indicate that there will be instances where dealers bid below that price, and that can still be a good price. At the end of the day, the market will determine the best price for that vehicle. And by the way, we still see a significant number of sellers accept below the reserve price as dealers see it on our pro platform. So that's how we do it. That's the process we go through. And we spend a lot of time, and we have a team dedicated to do this, understanding pricing and looking at it in a very segmented way. So it's not just a blanket rule. We are looking at it by segments to make sure that we're getting it accurate. And it's hard. It's really hard to price an individual car. What's most important is what the market says that the value of that vehicle is when it goes into the auction.
Yeah, I mean, I sent a good friend of mine Motorway's way this week. He'd had a part exchange price for his vehicle, and he actually got 1,500 quid more for it on Motorway. So he'd never even considered it. He hadn't really heard of it, so he obviously hadn't seen your adverts. Don't know where he's been living, but he was absolutely over the moon, as you can imagine. 1,500 quid more. He's buying an electric car now, and that pays for his charging point. So he was absolutely over the moon, and I think it was because his car was a popular one. You know, it was a popular car. Do you take into account popularity? You know, obviously Auto Trader has a retail rating. A lot of the time when we're buying cars, we look at that in detail when we're buying our vehicles, and I know other dealers do too. Do you have your own inbuilt Motorway retail rating?
Well, the way our algorithm is constantly updating, so it's constantly taking data on the selling prices of vehicles and pulling that through. So yes, it is constantly updating to reflect the real-time market prices that are being achieved for those vehicles. That's how we do it. We don't have a rating that we can expose to dealers, but the algorithm itself, the way it's set up, is effectively doing that.
Yeah, clever, very clever.
But it's great to hear that your friend got that deal. But it's also there's a dealer on the other side of that transaction who's purchased it at that price and can still make a good margin as well and turn that vehicle. So that's a nice example of where, yes, and of course dealers want the lowest possible prices, but that's when it's working really, really nicely. We're matching supply and demand. Effectively, the seller's got a great price, the dealer's got a price that they are comfortable with, they can make margin and turn that vehicle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just before we move on to our stories, just one last question for you. You're very close to the used car market. I mean, it's been an interesting year, hasn't it? What do you think is going to happen next? What are your predictions for the used car market going forward?
It's really difficult to say. I think if I look at the macroeconomic environment, I think a good year would be a solid year next year. I hope that that's the outcome it's going to be. I'm a little bit nervous about the macroeconomic environment, if I'm honest. Obviously, there's a lot going on at the moment, and we'll see how that plays out in the coming months. But I don't see it being like it has been in previous years that we've all experienced, where it's been big swings. I don't anticipate that at all. So, if you gun to the head, I'd say it's going to be another solid year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, especially with the budget not too far away, and find out what happens, next with the economy.
I think, and we've talked about this before, but I think going back to the fundamentals as a dealer and like making sure you're doing those brilliant basics that everyone talks about, I think just remains really, really critical. So it's working really hard to find the stock that works for your dealership, pricing it effectively, making sure you've got a really good customer experience when someone's on your site or comes into the comes into your dealership, and then looking at after sales and other areas to add additional revenue streams, which some of the dealers that you've been reporting on recently have been using to bolster their revenue and their margins. So I think it's consistently doing that stuff, which is not sexy. It's not a big headline, but that's how you're going to build a great business over time.
Yeah, absolutely. James, thank you very much for coming on and chatting to us today. I look forward to continuing our conversation at Podcast Live next week. And I do appreciate you taking some of those tough questions. It is Thank you very much. But John, we should probably do some stories.
Yes, and James, if you'd like to ask James anything about the fat content of pork shoulder, he's ready to answer that. And
25%.
That's just about it.
We interrupt this broadcast for some breaking news. John, I don't want to panic you, but the Car Dealer Podcast Live is coming round really rather fast.
Yes, I know that, James, because I own a calendar. But clearly you've been not paying attention.
How dare you, John? If I hadn't been paying attention, how would I know that it's on the September the 24th in Abingdon, that we've got the Polestar boss, Matt Galvin, Vicky Hart from Waylands, and Alex Bradley from Small Cars Direct on with us,
Well, technically it's closer to Didcot, but I'll let that one go. Anyway, I bet you've forgotten how people can book tickets.
No, John, because on my script right here, it says head to cardealermagazine.co.uk/podcast, and people listening to this can book tickets with the special discount code PICANTO for 10% off. There's a social barbecue after the recording and plenty of time for a social catch-up with other like-minded dealers. We look forward to seeing you there. This is a paid partnership in association with Dealerway. John, guess what?
Oh, God, you've bought more ducks, haven't you?
No ducks, John. Wrong there. I've actually got a new habit. I've signed up for Dealerway alongside more than 2,500 other rated and vetted car dealers to sell my trade part exchanges. The site is designed for dealers to sell their part exchanges for more money quickly and easily. There's no seller's fees, and buying a car costs just £99, one of the cheapest around. And when I haven't got the time to list a car myself, I can even WhatsApp them the details and they do it all for me.
That sounds awfully familiar. So are you selling all your stock there now?
Not exactly, John. But if I do have a sudden influx of Kia Picantos, I know where to send them. Dealers can find out more at dealerway.co.uk. We'll be right back. Now, John, I'm really enjoying how easy it is to pay sellers on CarWow.
I mean, presume you'd rather not pay them at all.
No, that is true. But now I can do it with CarWow Wallet. You can pay sellers, finance houses, and more instantly, literally in one click. It's secure, easy to use, and gets rid of all the pesky finance back and forth. It's a total game changer, John.
That does sound pretty good.
If you want to find out more, dealers can log on to carwow.co.uk/partners/carwow-wallet. Now, back to the podcast.
So James and I are going to run through our favourite stories of the week, and at the end, James gets to decide which one of us chose the best ones and who is the winner. I won last week. Yes, right. So I'm going to start. And I'm going to start with, I'm not going to start with JLR because you're going to cover that inevitably, James. I'm going to talk about the FCA. So the FCA has, and of course this is about the car finance scandal, in inverted commas. So the FCA is teaming up with influencers. We've written influencers here, but I think the term is finfluencers on the likes of TikTok and Instagram's financial influencers, James.
Thank you. Yeah. You are one of those, aren't you? You are one of those.
Am I? I don't think anyone would want my financial advice, to be completely honest with you. But they're teaming up with influencers to highlight the dangers of all these car finance claim adverts and using third-party companies to go chasing car finance companies for some form of compensation. And I mean, we've all seen this. It is all over the place. It's in Google ads. It's on, I assume it's in TV ads, but I don't really watch anything on terrestrial television, so I'm not entirely sure. I've had it come up on YouTube. I mean, it's all over the place, isn't it? And also, you've seen, like, I keep seeing relatively popular motoring YouTubey people like Shmee and Alex Kirsten, they've both been paid by different claims management firms to tout this sort of stuff. So it is everywhere, and it has been everywhere for quite a while now. And I think the FCA has suddenly woken up and realised this, that they can't just, mention it occasionally in like a common select meeting or something like that. They need to actually get it out to people who have no idea what the FCA is, for example, and put it in their sorts of language. So they're doing a £1 million campaign, which, well, it sounds like a lot of money. I don't know if it will be enough, to be honest, to counteract all this sort of stuff, because the horse is sort of bolted in a way. But anyway, I do kind of welcome them at least trying. So at the minute, it's just one guy on Instagram that I can see is a guy called Cameron Kazza Smith, who, as far as I can work out, is a bit like sort of Martin
Old
Lewis.
school friend, I think.
That's what we've written in the story.
Oh,
Kazza, like Cozza. I think is sort of like Martin Lewis for people that would use the word side hustle, where we might perhaps use the word second business, James. So I think it's targeting a slightly different demographic than us. But anyway, they are putting the word out to basically stop using claims management firms. Just sit tight and wait for the FCA to, launch the whole redress scheme. That is sort of part of the problem, is that there's not actually, all these claims management firms are here. You can go on, put in your reg. It says you're owed millions of pounds. And then you sit and wait and, they probably send you lots of marketing activity for the next 6 months to say that they're working really hard on your claim when actually not a lot's happening. Whereas the FCA they've got no news at the minute. There's nothing to actually do. So I guess at least they are doing something in the interim. What did you think, James?
I think it's interesting that they've come out with this campaign, but the more I think about it, the more I think about how the FCA is going to deal with this redress scheme. And I know we've sort of covered it before, but I mean, it is such a headache for them. And I can't help thinking that it's just going to be boiled down to something very, very simple, which will obviously cost the banks and finance companies quite a lot of money. But something as simple as, did you have finance during these years? Yes or no? If it was yes, you're due this amount of money. Because if they don't do something as simple as that, it will be so incredibly complicated. I don't think anybody will ever get any money. So I genuinely think it will come down to something as simple as that. You just have to prove. You might not even have to prove, because the banks will have to prove you didn't have finance during those years, and then you'll get the money from the affected businesses, because not all of the businesses were doing the things that they shouldn't have been doing, according to the FCA. So I think it will have to be a simple job, which is, in some respects, quite good, because if loads of people suddenly get 950 quid in their bank accounts, more often than not, they end up putting it down as a deposit on a new car. So,
yeah, that is very true. James, other James, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of you. I think, first of all, it's good that they're doing this. We want to try and avoid, although you're right that the horse has bolted to some extent, a full kind of PPI claims process industry popping up, if we can. Probably need to do more than this. In my experience of educating people about new propositions and new processes they have to go through, and I completely agree, you could imagine this becoming incredibly complicated, and by the way, very costly for the FCA to manage. If I just think about it operationally, they're going to have a whole claims management process that's going to have to flow through to all the different companies. They're going to have to push back information. So the simpler they can make it, the better. I think the financial services, the financing companies will probably want some proof, James, because otherwise it's an open checkbook. But I think they have to keep it super simple. The thing that for me, as I read this article this week, was just, like, when is all this going to happen? Like, when's it going to start? Yeah. I thought, we got the result from the Supreme Court, and then it's just, there's no deadline for when this is now going to start becoming operationalized and being accessible by consumers. And I think as an industry, we just want that transparency and clarity. And then I think the different companies that are affected can prepare accordingly. But at the moment, unless I've missed this, that doesn't seem to be forthcoming.
No, I mean, I'll quote our story. It says the FCA says compensation could begin next year.
It's going to take a while.
Not very solid. James, do you want to
Right.
move us on?
Yeah, I will move us on, and you have rightly predicted, John, the story that I'm going to go with, which is JLR. I feel bad talking about it again on the podcast, but it is such a difficult situation that manufacturers in. I just think we need to cover it again. I spoke to a number of people this week for a story on the website. I spoke to cyber security experts, one a renowned author about cyber security. I spoke to Professor David Bailey, who is a professor of business studies in Birmingham, who focuses on the automotive industry about this. And also, John, while we were out on the road, we popped into a dealer, didn't we? We popped into a JLR dealer in Northampton, because on the way up here we were chatting about it and we're just thinking that yes, it's very, very bad for JLR. So I mean, the headline story is the fact that they have paused production until Wednesday of next week, but everybody that I'm speaking to says very, very unlikely they're going to be starting it next week. I mean, if I was to hazard a guess, and I really am putting my neck on the line here, I can't see them restarting production maybe for the rest of this year. I think they are
Really?
yeah, I genuinely believe that, John. I think they are in such a difficult situation. There are so many different computer systems involved in those production lines. Most of them are run by robots, which are obviously run by computer systems. When those cybersecurity experts I spoke to said every day that goes on proves that this hack is even deeper than it first thought. So the fact it's dragged on this far, we're 19 days in now with no production. They're already saying they can't start until the 24th. It's going to be incredibly difficult just to restart it. I mean, just think about the restarting of that production line. You've got thousands of cars sat on production lines and JLR factories around the world, all with completely different specifications. You have to clear all of those lines. You have to start up again afresh. I just think, I mean, obviously I'm no manufacturing expert, John, but I can't see that being easy. So, but I mean, park that to one side, park JLR's head office's problems to one side. I wanted to know what this meant to the dealers. There are dealers out there who have had a rough time over the last few years. I was reminded by one of our listeners who listened to last week's podcast that you remember, like not long ago, we were talking about a parts crisis with this manufacturer. There was this manufacturer couldn't get parts out to dealers. You had customers with their cars sat in dealerships not being fixed for months on end, which meant that a lot of these dealers had to buy back those cars because the customers were so cheesed off. So they've already taken a hit. They're already been, and this is really kicking them while they're down. So going back to that dealer visit we popped into Northampton JLR. It's run by Sytner, huge site just off the M40 on the A43 junction there. Beautiful site. It was quiet, John, wasn't it? I mean, it was very quiet. There was a huge row outside the dealership of unregistered cars. Lots of Range Rovers sat there with
Which,
no
admittedly,
number.
you do expect to find at a dealership, but
Yes, you do.
they were all kind of PD-eyed and ready, weren't they? They were just
Yes,
literally everything was ready apart from the number plates.
yeah.
No
Which is
sticky tape on the
we
bonnets.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah, we know that that's the problem. We popped into the dealership. There was a few people in there, but nowhere near as what you'd need to keep the lights on in terms of revenue. There was a couple of people having their cars looked at, but we spoke to one of the salesmen. Well, I spoke to one of the salesmen and just said, if I wanted to buy a car, when could I get it? And his answer was, I don't know. He said speccing it would be quite difficult. Ordering it is a possible, but I can't tell you when it's going to be made or when you might get it. He said, if you want to use one, there's plenty out there and we can deal with those. These dealerships operate that via a different system. But I said, so what about servicing? If I've got a car that's got a problem, can you fix it? He said, depends what the problem is. He said, we've got the parts on the shelf. We can help you. If we need to order the parts in, it's going to be a struggle. And it was at that point, having a look around this huge business that must need huge sums of money on a daily basis to keep the lights on, I was thinking there's going to be some JLR dealers out there who are in serious trouble very soon if this carries on. And it just shows you the severity of this issue. It's not just the manufacturer. They're in really difficult circumstances. It is that big dealer network they've got, these big gin palaces they've spent millions on. And I really feel for that supplier network. There's been a lot of stories come up this week, but they describe JLR as a hub business. with all these suppliers relying on it, and they've been told by some of these workers to go on universal credit. I mean, it needs government action now. I think it needs a furlough scheme or something similar. It is a very, very worrying situation, John. I honestly can't think of a bigger story for years than this JLR hack.
No, I mean, and it's multifaceted, as you say. I mean, we were driving along yesterday, weren't we? And saw a Triumph Stag in front of us, and I was looking at that and thought, well, as you do, but I was thinking, like, when was the last time, apart from COVID, that you saw a car manufacturer grind to a halt in quite this way? You know, with previous hacks with Honda or whoever previously had them, it was kind of a few days a week, wasn't it? And then they sort of got things back up and running again. I think this has been the longest since, reason I mentioned Triumph Stag, is since like British Leyland or something, when it was just, constantly stop-starting with strikes. It's just an unprecedented, I'm bringing that word back, situation. And I guess the thing is, what, like you say about the used cars and that perhaps that's a different system, I don't even think it's perhaps a different system. I reckon it's a bit like when Arnold Clark had their big hack. What you soon realise after X number of hours of it being down is, right, what can we actually just do with a pen and paper here? And probably you can sell used cars with a pen and paper just like you would sell them, James, if your system went down. What you can't do is start making Range Rovers. That's the line, isn't it? And I saw another story as well, not in our publication, but in an esteemed other publication, suggesting that JLR had lost track of a lot of new cars that were produced in the time between this, being made and then the hack happening. It was into the thousands, they reckoned, it just disappeared. Well, not disappeared, obviously, because they were on lorries somewhere, but they'd, in whatever distribution system that they have, presumably they come out of the factory, they sit in Solihull or whatever in an enormous yard, or they go to Southampton and sit by the ports ready to go out. That, of course, has all gone into disarray. I should say JLR issued a statement saying that was nonsense and they know exactly where every single car is. But that sounds slightly implausible based on everything else, is all I would suggest. So, yes, a giant, giant nightmare.
We talked about it, didn't we, when we were in the dealership earlier this week, that it takes us, we have to log into 12 different systems to sell a car at the Clever Car Collection. 12 different systems to sell a car. And that is us selling sub £10,000 used cars. I mean, can you imagine the systems that they have to log into? And being locked out of them at a JLR dealership is absolutely devastating. And I know I just really feel for them. I really feel for everybody affected, and especially those in head office, because the stress that must be involved in trying to get this sorted, and knowing that it doesn't matter how much money you throw at it, it's not going to fix it because they're locked out. And if they pay the ransom, will they even be given? That's if they are being.
Yes, we don't know, do we?
Don't know. Yeah. But if they are being blackmailed and they do pay the ransom, they might still not get access to the system. I don't know. It's worrying. James, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, my first reaction to this is massive sympathy to JLR, the dealers, and their suppliers. I mean, this is a criminal enterprise that's taken down all of them, and I think lots of other businesses look at it and go, "Thank God it's not us," because it could very easily be another business. And by the way, this enterprise has gone after M&S, Co-op, a whole bunch of businesses, well-known businesses, and it's terrible, absolutely terrible given the impacts it's having. I think if they get it back up and running in 3 weeks, they will have done very well. I'm not an IT security expert, but my understanding is what happens when these hackers get into your system is they work from one system to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, fully encrypt them, and you literally can't see the data. So the story about not being able to track the cars may not have been correct, but it doesn't surprise me. It wouldn't have surprised me if it was correct, because where's the data? Well, it can't get into the system, right? So it's fundamentally breaking your IT infrastructure. And my understanding from M&S was that when they had this issue, they had to rebuild the technology stack. They had to rebuild their core systems from scratch because they couldn't decrypt their systems. And that takes a long time. I think it took them 3 to 4 months to get back fully online for everything. So that was, I think they were faster on deliveries, but click and collect took longer. And this is not, they're not a manufacturing business with all of the complexity of the supply chain. So if they get it back by the, I think it was the 20, well, I forget when they were saying.
Next Wednesday, they're saying.
Yeah, next Wednesday. That will be an amazing achievement, and they should be given a lot of credit for that. But I could also see a world where it does take them a lot longer. It may be partial. They get partial systems recovery, and then it takes a number of weeks to get everything back up and running. But yeah, it's horrific, to be honest with you. And I think a lot of it's just as an exec leading a tech business, one of the things you have to do is you have to have the detection systems, you have to have the testing systems, so that you are actually getting people to try and penetrate your systems, and then you need the training of your teams so that they don't fall prey to these kind of hackers. But then you need Plan B, right, if it goes down, and part of that is how you set up your architecture, so you've got air gaps between the different systems. But it's easy to say that after the event. It's really, really challenging for JLR and, let's say, the dealers and suppliers. So a huge sympathy. I hope they can get up and running in the next couple of weeks. I fear it might take them longer, but I don't know. I don't have all the details about what's happened. But by the way, I would be amazed if they're not being subject to extortion as well.
Yeah, me too. I mean, James, you in a tech business, it's not about throwing money at this, is it? I don't think JLR's got deep pockets when it comes to the support it's got from the Tata Group. But even then, it's not about throwing money in it. It's time, and it takes time.
Yeah, it's time. If you've got to do what I described, which is rebuild your data and your systems effectively from scratch, that takes time. You can throw money to some extent. You can throw money at it, but it will take time to do that. And this is just based on looking at other examples. As I say, you could take M&S as a good example, where they effectively told the markets that's what they had to do, and it took them 3 or 4 months. So again, I don't know the details of JLR, I'm not in their company, but it's quite an undertaking if they have to go down that path.
Yeah.
I can't imagine just to say at the end, I can't imagine a scenario where if they did the M&S thing of saying, right, well, we'll start one, M&S started, well, we've got to get food into supermarkets first. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Don't worry about deliveries. Don't worry about click and collect, all that sort of stuff. I can't imagine in a setup such as JLR, what would you not prioritize? Because if you're making the cars in the factory, they've got to go somewhere. All the parts have got to come in. There's lots of different, it's all just in time, isn't it? The whole entire thing, it almost has to turn on as one unit all at once. And I suppose it hasn't stopped since COVID, and perhaps even then didn't stop in quite the same way that it has now. Yeah. Shall I move us on?
Well, I mean, please do. I mean, the more I talk about it, again, the more it stresses me out and the more I feel for it.
I know. Well, I'll move on to another very stressed individual, I imagine, which is car dealer or former car dealer, I suppose, Kevin Mackey, who has not had a very nice 18 months, 24 months. It's a situation that's rumbled on for a while. 2021. Oh, my God. Right. Well, anyway, Kevin Mackey, for those who've forgotten or haven't heard of him before, had a very successful Renault dealer up in Scotland. Had been going it was a family business, Mackey Motors, been going for quite a long time, decades. And then one day in 2021, as you say, James, he alleges RCI pulled the plug, effectively. So if you're mainly a franchise car dealer, as he is, I don't know if he had any other franchises apart from Renault, or perhaps he had a Nissan one as well. RCI is Renault and Nissan's joint bank, and a little bit like the JLR situation, a lot of things all tied in together. So Renault, Nissan Bank and Renault pulled the plug effectively on his business. And I think it's difficult to talk about because it's going through a legal case. So he's taking those three companies to court over what happened, because in effect, they turned his company off overnight because they withdrew funding, which, as anyone would know, it's an immediate stop, isn't it? As I understand it, they pulled his new car franchise. I believe they pulled the servicing authorized repairer situation as well. So almost overnight, he didn't have a Renault dealer anymore, which is quite hard to come back from when you employ the number of people that a franchise dealer employs. They're all working on commission, etc., etc. And we've covered this case quite a lot. Kevin's been talking to one of our staff writers, Jack Williams, extensively over the period about all this. But of course, it goes a bit quiet because things are going through legal matters, blah, blah, blah. You can't keep talking while that sort of stuff's happening. But it's come back into the news because he's appeared on GB News, which I admit is not an outlet I particularly like, but it has given him some great coverage of this matter. So he's been talking to none other than Nigel Farage about the situation. Of course, well, they describe it as GB News described it as him being debanked, which in a way he was. But I think that marginalises the issue, really, because it's not really about the bank necessarily. It's about the entire rug being pulled from under him across lots of different situations. It's not just that he's had his bank account frozen or they've said you can't bank with us anymore. They've said all those cars on your forecourt, you're going to need to find funding from someone else. And that's a very different situation to, being told you need to move your savings somewhere else. So he's been on there and obviously had quite a bit of publicity from that, which is a good thing. And since then, he's had his, I'm trying to find the right story here, he's had his case brought up by his local MP in some sort of Commons hearing as well, who was quite outspoken in the situation, described it as I'll try and pronounce this in a Scottish, no, I'm not going to do that. Described it as didn't want to use the F-bomb, so I've described it as a cluster-fankle up, which is another term I'm familiar with.
I did love that term, John, and I think I'm slightly worried about what AI thinks of me because in my last few searches to ChatGPT, I've got, can you give me the Volkswagen Up 2013 spec? Who is Cameron? Who's Cameron Kazza Smith? And what does cluster-fankle mean? But you're right. Yes, it is a.
And what was the answer?
It's a Scottish way of saying cluster, the rude word, but without saying the rude word, which I was quite impressed he did in the House of Commons without saying the rude word.
Well, yeah, true. I mean, presumably you are allowed to say the rude word in there, but anyway.
Sorry, John.
Yeah. So hopefully that will. It seems a very complicated matter, and I don't really want to get into all of the ins and outs of it, but there's been a lot of finger pointing between. I'll quote the MP. It says, my constituent has been to the Financial Conduct Authority, who told them to go to the police, who then told them to go back to the FCA, who then told them to go to Citizen Advice. You could not make this up. I mean, no one seems to know really what to do in that sort of situation. So hopefully Kevin will get some answers.
It's hard to comment on this one, John, as it is, going through the courts. But I mean, one thing I have to say is I do admire Kevin Mackey's persistence on this. He's certainly not letting it lie, and I can completely understand why. I do feel for him. I mean, we obviously don't know all of the facts in this case, but he's certainly trying hard to keep this one going and to get some justice. And I do hope, like you say, he gets some answers as a result.
Indeed.
Do you want me to move on, James? I mean, I don't really. It's been quite hard for you to comment.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult to comment on this one because, I mean, first of all, I can understand why he's fighting for his livelihood, right? And his business is at risk. It's just difficult to comment when you don't know the other side of the story. I don't know what's precipitated this on their side, and so it's just hard to come to a point of view on it. Really, it sounds terrible, but I don't know we don't know the other party's perspective on it. So
hard to comment on that one. John, have I got time to wedge one more in?
Please wedge away.
Okay, I'll wedge away. I'd just like to talk there's a number of car dealer results come out this week. There's quite a few of them coming. It's obviously getting towards the end of September, where it's the point that you have to get them in with Companies House, and it's an interesting time for us because we get a real insight into how people performed last year. And the one I just want to highlight is Toyota specialist Stephen Eagle's results. I mean, he is a fantastic operator. He turned over a record 1.09 billion in 2024, and pre-tax profits up slightly to 15 million pounds. That's despite very tough market conditions. He said they sold, and just remember, this is a guy that only represents Toyota and Lexus, albeit at 30 sites, the largest Toyota dealer in Europe. He sold 55,000 vehicles. I mean, it's just an absolutely staggering result. And they paid themselves £8.27 million in very well-deserved dividends as a result. But, congratulations to Stephen Eagle, an amazing business. We did an interview with him on the Car Dealer Magazine YouTube channel. There's a podcast out there about inspiring leaders, and he is certainly one of those. And for those people interested, I would say go and check that out, because he's got an amazing story how he started that business with Toyota's help back in the day, and has built it into an absolute juggernaut. So congratulations to him.
Yes, and obviously has their trust as a manufacturer, doesn't he? Because in the last 2 years, he swept up a lot of Marshall Toyota sites, which were ex-Motorline, weren't they? So yes, he's obviously a preferred partner of theirs. I mean, he's talking about eggs in one basket, though. It's very, very Toyota-centric, isn't it? But obviously works.
Yeah. That's my wedging done.
Okay, lovely. I won't ask for James's comment on that, because we have to check out of this hotel very soon, James. So we need to end this so I can pack everything away. So, James, before I ask for your verdict, are there any stories you think we've missed this week?
I think we've got a good coverage. Nothing for me to add. I mean, there are other stories, but I'm conscious of time, so
that's very kind of you.
You need to get your sausages out of the hotel rooms.
That is a real danger that we'll leave them behind.
So to speak.
Not now, James. So I'm going to have to ask you, who chose the best stories, or what was your favourite story?
It's hard to call it a favourite, but I do think the JLR story is the one that stands out because of the impact it's having and the importance of that for not just JLR, but as we talked about, the dealer suppliers, the whole industry. So, yeah, definitely that one stands out for me. And hopefully they can manage to get themselves back online and it doesn't take too long. So fingers crossed, and all the best to them and the dealers and suppliers that are impacted.
I will take that win. Thank you very much, James. What's that put the scores in the series, John? 4-2?
I don't know or care, James.
I'm going to say 4-2. I'm going to write it down on this Novotel little pad here that I've got.
I didn't get one of those. Must be exclusive to the Lovers Suite you're in. Well, all that's left for me to say is thank you to James for coming on today. It's been lovely to chat to you and chat about Motorway. And of course, we will see you next week on Wednesday. And if anyone listening wants to come see you as well and have a good chat, just go and buy a ticket to Car Dealer Podcast Live with a complimentary barbecue.
Yeah, very nice to see you, James. Yeah, thank you very much.
Look forward to it.
Good stuff.
Lovely.
Thanks, both.
And thank you as well to James for regaling us with tales of ground pork. We'll be back next week with another episode. And of course, there probably will be an interim episode as well from Podcast Live. So make sure you're subscribed so you can be notified when that goes live. If you want to check out the stories we mentioned today, take a look in the show notes below or head to cardealermagazine.co.uk. Thanks for listening and goodbye.